because we learn different things every day.
They push you to always believe that even if something is hard, you can still achieve it.
They're constantly encouraging me, and they're trying to make me reach that stretch goal.
My teacher has taught me to worry about my education, what life will be in my future if I don't finish high school.
Mr. Coffee's taught me how to count.
She's definitely taught me to not be biased.
He's taught me some great science.
She makes me look for more sources.
For me to see that somebody was just like me and was able to succeed, she has inspired me to be a better person.
Having a great teacher makes things possible.
He's my dad, he's my mom, he's my friend, he's my psychiatrist.
He kind of believes in me unconditionally, so that way it's easier to believe in yourself.
And that's why teachers matter.
We got all things situated, the mathematics were calculated. I feel wasted and I feel jaded, the process here is so complicated. 2 steps forward and 3 steps back.
Hey all, it's Tony Volpicello and we are the Career Jigsaw. Welcome back to another episode. Before we kick off today, I just wanted to extend a heartfelt thanks to all of our listeners. You've made this experience very gratifying, and in the spirit of the season, thank you. So it's time for another industry spotlight. Today we'll explore the teaching field. In my opinion, one of the noblest professions and underappreciated one can pursue. Our guest today is Lee. As with some of our previous episodes, we're on a first-name basis only today for privacy reasons. Now, I've known Lee for a number of years and have witnessed firsthand her growing passion around teaching. Lee, welcome to the podcast, and tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
So I have had several different avenues in my career, which led me to being a public school teacher in New York City. I went to college in New Jersey at now the University of St. Elizabeth. I have a master's in business. I have a master's in education. I've taken credits to go toward my English as a second language degree. I also enjoy reading. I'm a very avid reader. I feel I'm an avid reader. I'm at about 40 books for the year. And I love going to Broadway and taking walks and doing fun things with my family.
So before we go deeper into teaching and how you got there, tell us a little bit more about your career journey.
Well, I didn't start out in teaching. I went to school to study communications. I wanted to do radio and television, and I did do radio and television for a while. Then I ended up doing marketing for many years. And then I did some career shifts, and I ended up in education, and then I ended up teaching. So I've been teaching for the last decade in the New York City public school system.
Here's a thought to kick off our interview. Teaching is the one profession that creates all other professions. So let's dive right in. So my first question is basically picking up where you left off. You're in teaching now. How did you get started? Was it a passion? Were you inspired? Did you fall into it? Kind of just curious how you got into teaching.
So teaching, as I mentioned, was not the first career that I had. However, I did notice in all the careers that I had leading up to this, there was an aspect of teaching in everything I did. So the first career I had in radio, I did a lot of work with interns. I did a lot of new hire training. I was in promotions. And so it was a lot of teaching people how to do things, teaching onboarding. And that was really something that I enjoyed doing, even things I remember in promotions, like folding the tape a certain way to make sure that the posters don't fall down when you're at a concert. So I liked that. And then I went into retail for a while. I was working for L'Oreal, and I enjoyed teaching when people would come in about the different cosmetics, how the different skincare worked, how the products worked. That was really my favorite part of the job. The inventory, not so much, but the teaching people about the products was great. And then eventually I was in marketing and I lost the ability to teach people because even though through marketing you're teaching people through the different messaging, it's really more sales-based. It's not, to me, you're not really teaching people. So I was missing that aspect of the job. And I was working for a nonprofit. The nonprofit ended up kind of doing a bunch of layoffs, and I was laid off. And I was like, okay, I need to think of something else to do. And I was already in the process at the time in New Jersey to get my alternate route certification. The process in New Jersey is very different than the process in New York. You take a praxis test, and then you have to teach for a while, and you can get your certification that way, but only in the master's degree that you have. So my master's is in business, so I was looking to teach at a school that would just have like a CTE type school where I could teach a business class. But it ended up that I moved to New York City and got a different marketing job, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I should just focus on marketing and not worry about education. And I was teaching some classes at a college. And when I was in a position again where the market was downsizing, I was working for DeVry at the time, I was like, you know what, I should pursue education full time. It's really something that I've enjoyed, working with people, training people. And that's what education is. You're training younger people to become functioning adults in society. So I did a program in New York City called New York City Teaching Fellows. I tried the first time and I was not selected, and I was encouraged to try again, so I did, and I was selected, and it's a 2-year process to get your master's in education, so I did that. And I worked at a school in Queens for 8 years, and now I've been at a school in Manhattan for 3 years.
Wow, really interesting, and I might be wrong, but doesn't sound like the typical career path of a teacher who they go to school for teaching, they know this is their calling. Sounds like to me, you got a taste of teaching a little bit in these other careers and then finally realize this is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to teach others full time, not as part of a job. So
yeah, you'd be surprised. From the people that I've met in the 2 different schools that I've been in, and then through the different PDs, how would I explain that? Like the professional development programs that I go to throughout the different avenues that I pursue in teaching, I've met a lot of people who are looking at teaching as a second career. Bankers who have come to it after working in banking for 20, 25 years. A pharmacist at one point lots of people who've retired and are looking at this as their second career. I think what was different for me is that I was only about 10 years into being a professional when I was like, oh, let me make this switch. And so that's how I came to teaching. But it was something that was always interesting to me, but to say that it was something that I was passionate about when I was in college, you're right. That was not something that I was passionate about. I am definitely passionate about it now, but it wasn't something I was thinking about when I was younger.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. So you already had shared a lot about the journey that led you to where you are today. Were there any pivotal moments in that journey that got you to what you're doing today?
Well, thinking about the careers that I had, it feels weird to say careers that I had. It doesn't seem like it was that much time, but thinking about those careers, I think that when people would say to me like, oh, wow, I never understood how that aspect of this job worked, or I never understood how this industry worked, and then I was able to explain it to them, that kind of made things click. I didn't understand how they were clicking into place at the time, but it made me think, okay, I should pursue education. But thinking in how my career is coming together now, some pivotal moments for me that have kind of taken me from Queens and being a special education teacher to now being dual certified as special education and English as a second language. I see kind of having me model myself after people that I see as mentors in the school has been really helpful to me. Identifying opportunities for change. I think that systematically schools stay as is and don't want to see big changes happen. And one of the things that I think I've learned from the business world is that you don't want to always stay exactly the way you are. Even if things are working well, you want to constantly evaluate. You want to use data to make sure that there are things that are going well. If they're going well, could they be more efficient? Could they be better? So I think that's something that's really been helpful in my career thus far. And I think that soliciting feedback, which is something that I think more and more schools are doing now, but it's not something that was really super common when I got into education. People were like, why would you want to ask the students how you're doing in the class or how this unit is going? But they are, I know this is not really popular to say in education, but they're your customer. They're the ones that are coming in, they're your audience. So you want to make sure that they're engaged, that they're happy with what's going on. And of course, you want to make sure that they understand what's going on. So you do your little checks for understanding in class, but overall, you want to make sure that they understand how things are coming together, how they're going to use these skills in their real life. So that's been helpful.
I think that's a great analogy. And it's probably, you're right, unusual in teaching to call the student a customer.
Right.
But why not involve that customer, that student, in the process so they learn more, you become a better teacher, and everyone wins. So really well said. So I think I know the answer to this next question. So maybe there's two answers, but I think there's an obvious one here. What has been the most rewarding part of your career so far?
I think, seeing the students grow at this point, I teach high school, so I've been in the school system long enough that I've had students in ninth grade, and then they graduate from high school, they come back and visit, and they've told me that things that I've taught them in class, they were able to utilize in college. I've had students in ninth grade, and we've done things where I've kind of pushed for change. For example, one of the things that when I first started teaching, they didn't want you to do is teach grammar. It seems weird for you and I, who both learned grammar, to be like, what do you mean you're not going to teach grammar in school? It was something where it was like, they can just kind of come to it as they read through. And, of course you can stop and kind of teach different grammar skills as you're going through readings. But I was like, I really think we need to go back to having grammar lessons and implicitly teach grammar. And I've had students come back and thank me for it because they've seen it on SATs, they've seen it on ACTs, and they really were like, if you hadn't taught me what clauses were, I would have gone to the SAT and been like, Santa Claus? Like, what are they talking about? Which to me seems like, oh gosh. But I'm really glad that they are, it's very rewarding to have them kind of like see you as the person who brought them this information. And then the other thing is over the course of time, I have worked with some students who are very, very special needs. And I have a student, for example, in recent years where they were not able because of a disability to speak. And several times over the course of the year, he said my name, this student. And it was really heartwarming knowing that he had such difficulty forming words, and he was able to come up and be like, and then said my name. And I was like, oh my gosh. So things like that are very, very rewarding to me.
I thought I knew the rewards, but you just took it to a whole other level, emotionally and otherwise. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. What's the best definition of a teacher? Well, here's what ChatGPT had to say.
The best definition of a teacher encompasses both their professional role and their profound impact. A teacher is a guide, mentor, and facilitator who imparts knowledge, fosters critical thinking, and inspires personal growth, enabling learners to discover their potential and contribute meaningfully to the world. This definition highlights not just the act of teaching, but the transformative influence teachers have on their students' lives.
So you've had the benefit now of being in the industry for how long?
Oh, a little over a decade now.
Okay, so 10 plus years. When you look back at what you wish maybe you would have known then that you know now, advising someone just going into college, getting out of college, looking to enter teaching, what advice do you have for them?
I would tell them not to wait. I would tell them if they have any interest at all to go ahead and jump in now, especially if they're in New York and not in New York City and not in another place. We have a fantastic union. We have great benefits. And looking around, I went to college in New Jersey. A lot of my friends went into education. The benefits for education, the retirement for education, I would be close to on my way out instead of mid-career at this point, which would be nice because then I could be starting a second career, or I could be going into consulting, education consulting, or coaching at this point. But I will be teaching for a long time to come, which is great. But it takes a lot of energy and effort to teach. So the older you get, it's a lot. It's a lot to put in the classroom. So I would definitely recommend that they jump in and start right away. I would also recommend that they know what they're getting into and to really ensure that they understand the state rules and regulations. There are so many states now that ban certain content. And I am a huge advocate that we should be teaching skills, not necessarily content, but you can certainly use different contents to teach skills. But there are some school districts and some states that will fine teachers. They could fire teachers for sharing certain things that you and I might be talking about just at the dinner table with our families. So just to be very aware before you jump into a certain school district, and be very aware of where you're going to be to ensure that your union has your backing and make sure that they are fighting for your benefits.
And I think there's probably an element of also even aligning to your values in what you can and can't teach. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think about the compliance aspect of it. I'm sure it varies state by state, as many other things do. So great 2 pieces of advice. Any others? Because we did talk more about the college kid getting out, and I think starting early and trying to be focused was good. Any other advice for maybe those who took more of your path of eventually getting there?
I think that, a lot of people will try to dissuade you from going into teaching. They will say, like I did before, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of energy. And it is, but it is very rewarding. I know I say to myself all the time, like, it's so much work and you are so tired. There's nothing like being a teacher on a Friday evening and coming home. You are exhausted. But it is a great kind of exhaustion, and the rewards just really outweigh the downside of being exhausted. So it's really great. It's rewarding. It's wonderful to work with students. Largely, it's wonderful to work with the other people in the school, the other teachers, the paraprofessionals, the support staff that's there. And it's wonderful to keep learning. Like, if you're someone who just enjoys learning as you go through life, being in education is great because you're always going to be learning and pushing yourself to know more.
Great point. I have a tougher question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
So we've solicited advice to those looking to enter the field. What advice do you have for parents of the students that maybe you teach or others? There's got to be some burning advice, I would assume, to the parents out there listening.
I think the one thing that I would want to remind parents is that we as educators look at this as a team effort. So we want to have guardian feedback, parental feedback when we are looking to see what's best for a student. And also to remember that teachers are professionals. In most states, you have your teaching certification, which required several exams. It requires, in all states, obviously, a bachelor's degree. In most states, it requires a master's degree. In many states, teachers have several master's degrees. So you're essentially working with someone who has the educational equivalent of higher than a PhD. And so many times people will question, well, are you sure you know what you're doing? Yes, we're sure. So please, you are the expert on the child. We are the expert on what we can do. It's never, we're not trying to fight. It's not combative. We're trying to come to you as a team effort. So many times I experience like a defense perspective, and that's never where I'm coming from. It's always, I'm trying to look at it as like, let's come to it with a collective. Like, there's so many people here that want to help, so let's all come together and do that.
That's simple but powerful advice. I think you said it multiple times, the phrase team effort. And I think that's how more parents have to think about it. Less that I outsourced my kid to school for the day.
Sure. And
however they come back, good or bad, you're only to blame or only to get credit. I think I get to your point, a tremendous team effort. So, I'm going to fire this next question at you because I've thought a little bit about it. And, some industries change, some don't. I'm curious about yours, considering what we all saw during COVID. So where do you see the teaching industry evolving over the next 5 or 10 years?
It has changed so much just in the last decade that I've been there. In the last school that I was in, we had smart boards in every classroom. For those of you who are not aware of smart boards, they are these wonderful electronic whiteboards that you can write on electronically. You can bring up the internet. You can put PowerPoint presentations. Now Canva, we didn't have Canva when I first started teaching. You have all these wonderful things you can use. At this school that I'm at now, we do have smart boards. We also have whiteboards. We also still have chalkboards. So there's like an evolutional process going on at the school that I'm at now. But I think that something that's so important is implementing different aspects of technology into education and being strategic about it. Students engage with media in such a different way than you and I engage with media. And even students who are able to kind of multitask, even though a younger person's brain is not wired to multitask in a way that an older person's brain is wired to multitask, they are able to look at something for, 25, 30 seconds, get the gist, move on to something else. They kind of eat through things much faster than we do. So we need to be aware of that. I know there are a lot of educators who are aware of that. Dr. Goldie Muhammad has talked a lot about that. Dr. Catelyn Tucker has talked a lot about that, about how to kind of set up the classroom to speak to students in a way that works for them. I do think that something that educators need to be aware of is not to use technology just for technology's sake. We have to be very strategic about it, but that's something that's changing. And then, of course, we have AI coming our way. There's so many wonderful things about AI that are going to help with education and help make education better. And so many things that are not going to be helpful with education. I mean, there are students who will bring an essay home and just pop it into ChatGPT and say, okay, ChatGPT, write me this essay. And my argument is, don't have the students write the essay at home. Have them write it in class, which also helps them draw boundaries. But I think that, these are just things we need to be aware of. And also, teaching students how to use AI to be helpful. We do not need to be stuck on writing an introduction paragraph if that's something that we are having trouble with. Let AI write it for us, but then make sure that we communicate with the teacher and make sure we're citing in our essay that we did not write this and this was not our work. So just kind of, we have to move forward with that and we have to accept it. As teachers, we can't say, well, we have to have students read full books because we read full books. We're not the same as the students who are going through school now, and we have to let them use AI because it's here and it's not going away.
That's really fascinating. I mean, and you think there's just two components. There's technology inside the classroom, smart boards, etc., dumb boards, and then the technology outside the classroom, AI. And I think, again, where it all evolves and how to play fair and how to make sure students in the end are really learning and teachers are really impactful, I think is obviously the key. I hinted this in a prior question, but again, I have a good sense for what I think the satisfaction comes from being a teacher. Is there anything that would surprise anyone out there listening about being a teacher?
I think, there are so many, especially post-COVID, so many, thank you so much for being a teacher. We love teachers are heroes because people now recognize how much work goes into being a teacher. I think that something that maybe people don't realize is that it's so data-driven and there's a lot of paperwork beyond putting together a lesson and beyond grading. Like putting together students. I look at test scores and group students, based on their test scores and not just overall test scores, certain skills, and make sure that they're put in groups that way, or making sure that you're following up. We have in the school district I'm in certain times of the week outside of school where we are to be contacting guardians and parents to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. We have to update websites. We have to update Google Classroom and different learning management systems to make sure that communication is happening. So there's so much that goes on. It's almost like, Google Classroom and different learning management. It's like running Salesforce for a school. So it's very helpful if you have a marketing or sales background if you want to go into education because you'll already be ready to go because you have all this, like making sure you track all the conversations. It's just a lot of kind of it's not micromanaging, but it's you might feel like if you have only done education and not done something in sales and marketing, you might be like, why am I tracking all of this stuff? But you need to, because you essentially have a ton of clients and you need to make sure that you're always following up with the clients. And if somebody else, another teacher needs to check in, they can see all of this information and it's all there. So
Great point. Thank you for sharing that. So if I'm out there now and I'm listening and I'm just starting to think about whether or not I hear this calling and I want to follow it, are there any books, podcasts, resources out there that will help me learn a little bit more about the field before entering it?
So I'm going to give you two that I recommend. I mentioned over the course of our interview 2 different PhDs in education that are phenomenal, but here's two different things, totally different ends of the spectrum. So the first one is Edutopia. They are, they have a social media presence, they have a website, and they just give you all kinds of studies and information, and different teachers will give them information and kind of do blogs for them, and it's amazing. They have all kinds of updates. Then the other end of the spectrum is Bored Teachers. They're so funny, but it kind of gives you the ins and outs of like the day in the life of a teacher. And they also have some great resources for you as well. But I think that will give people kind of the inside of what it might be like to be an educator and to get information about education before kind of taking that leap.
Interesting. Sounds impactful, and I appreciate it. When you said bored, B-O-R-E-D?
Yes,
bored teachers. The way I heard it. Okay, great. Excellent. Yep. Excellent. All right, so as my listeners know, I try to keep this podcast around 20-ish minutes, and we're right around that now. So before we wrap, any final thoughts on the industry, what you've shared with the team today, anything else you want to share?
I just want to share that, thank you first for giving me this opportunity to come in and talk. If you're interested in education, please pursue it. I want to thank the teachers that I had, Miss Newman, Miss Ballin, Miss Sauer, who, ultimately I didn't realize at the time, but were pushing me toward education. And hopefully there'll be someone talking to you later on in life who mentioned my name and say thank you for pushing them to education.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. And again, great having you on. Great insights. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I am who I am.
I am who I am.
I am who I am.
I am who I am because I had a great teacher.
A great teacher is a work of art.
A great teacher is a key to success.
A great teacher can change a life.
A great teacher changed my life. I learned that I didn't need to be like everybody else.
I learned that everything is possible.
I learned not to sweat the small stuff.
I learned that you can approach knowledge with a sense of wonder and fun.
I didn't learn how to speak Spanish, even though she was my Spanish teacher, but I did learn how to be myself.
I think it's important for our teachers to know that we appreciate them. They make a difference in our kids' lives, and we recognize that.
Teachers are extremely needed and underpaid and undervalued. They spend so much time with our children that we just wanted to give back.
They're the ones who are helping you through all the hard times that you have during your classes. Like, if you can't figure out something in your math, you could always go to a teacher. They're always there for you when you need them.
Oh, teachers go out of their way every single day, and it's not just teaching, it's emotional support for the students, it's tying their shoes. I mean, there's so many little things that they do.
They work so hard, from morning till night. I have teachers in my family, and I know the sacrifices, but they love it, and we love them for it.
Teachers are the ones who are shaping society. They are really educating our future.
They are our heroes every day, and we cannot say enough about how much we appreciate them.
They are the ones who are going to mold our little people past what we can do and to educate them on the world at large. And that's pretty much the most important thing that someone can do.
Again, I want to thank teacher and special guest Lee for joining the podcast today. If you have any questions for Lee, email me directly at thecareerjigsaw@gmail.com, all one word, and I will connect each of you. I hope this episode inspires you to either become a teacher or to simply go thank a teacher. Either way, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like what you heard, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and now YouTube. This is Tony Volpicello. We are the Career Jigsaw. Thanks for listening. Be safe, all. Maestro, cue the closing credits.